In this podcast, two Gen Xers are taking a trip down memory lane, revisiting and reflecting on the cinema of the 1980s. We'll look at the hits and the flops, the studio blockbusters and art house indies, the critically acclaimed, and the universally reviled. The series is hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli, a writer and librarian, and features Dustin Morrow, a filmmaker, author, and professor of film. So pull on your leg warmers, crank up your boombox, and hop in the DeLorean. It's time for The Long Rewind. Welcome to The Long Rewind. I'm your host, Lisa. With me, as always, is Dustin.
Hello, everyone.
And I think today what are we doing today? We're wrapping things up. We're thanking people. What are we doing today?
This is just a very brief episode telling people where we are and when we're coming back.
Okay.
So we ended at the end of the year,
Yep.
2024. We came on the air, if that's the right expression. We came online, I guess,
Yep.
in February. And we went all the way through the end of December without
great.
having any reruns. So go
Wow.
us.
All right. New content every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that sort of set up a structure that is, unmanageable going forward.
Unsustainable. Okay. We are regular people after all.
Yes, we can't turn out, this isn't our job. We both have full-time jobs.
Yes.
Lisa, as you probably know, if you're an avid listener, is a librarian.
Yep.
And I am a professor and a filmmaker and a writer and other things. And so we both are doing a lot of work, and this is something we kind of do for fun on the side because we both love 80s cinema, and we want to share that love with other people.
Yeah. Plus, it's fun.
Yeah. It's fun to do it.
We love talking to people.
So how will this work going forward? We also finished our structural backbone, our what would you call it? Our map to our episodes,
right.
which was built around this idea that we were going to do a year-by-year examination of the 80s by splitting each year into 2 episodes, giving it 2 hours. I mean, we could have done like an episode a month probably and found plenty to talk about, but it just felt unwieldy to do more than 2 episodes per year. Those episodes are the thing that I'm sort of most proud of about this podcast. I think we have provided, I think in terms, I did a lot of research on 80s movies podcast before we started this thing because I wanted to make sure that ours was doing something somewhat different.
Yeah, of course.
And there are a lot of 80s movies podcasts and a lot of 80s pop culture podcasts.
Yeah. Lots of great stuff out there.
There was a podcast where some guys were, I don't know if they were doing the 80s. There was one where there were some guys that were examining it month by month. And they only made it like a couple years and ended. I mean, most podcasts fizzle out at some point within a year or two at most, because they think it's a lot more work than people think it'll be fun.
Right.
Hence, there's a million podcasts out there. I mean, people think it's going to be a blast, and then they get into it, and they're like, "Oh, geez, this is like a lot of work."
Well, especially when it's not your job, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
if it were our job, it'd be one thing, but yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of podcasts kind of come and go very frequently. And that podcast, I wish I could remember the name of it, but they started this, they had this grand idea that they were going to do an episode for every month and
Of the 80s,
and they didn't get anywhere near it. I can't remember if it was the 80s or not.
Or whatever it was. I mean,
whatever it was, but I was
hats
looking
off,
for when we were doing our, when we were ideating, when we were conceptualizing this podcast,
Sure.
I was trying to figure out what kind of structure we could give to it because I felt like it needed some structure.
Yeah.
And I found that podcast and I thought that's interesting, but I can see the same thing happening long before we get to the end of, because that would be
it's a lot. It's
that would be
unwieldy.
a lot of episodes.
Not only that, but like, it's nice to mix it up for the listeners too, I think, to give them something a little different, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting to look. I was looking at the listens on our podcast, and I thought it's not something I had ever really looked at until the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I really had no idea what kind of listenership we were getting beyond like the feedback we were getting from people.
Yeah.
And I expected that there would either be a ton of listeners for those episodes, or that those episodes about the years.
The years.
Would be like the lowest listened to, maybe.
One or the other.
And I was surprised to find that it was just all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that the listenership was fairly consistent. So people are listening to both those structural year by year episodes, those, sweeping, creating a canon, if you will, of 80s cinema episodes, and all the sort of episodes we did in between, which focused on specific subjects or on the quizzes, which seemed to be very popular.
Oh, good.
The ones where I was quizzing you.
People like to hear me be quizzed, I guess.
I think they like to play along.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
I heard from a bunch of people
Yeah.
that were like, I play against her. I don't do anywhere near as well as her.
Oh, well.
So you're smoking everybody that has reached out to me.
Well,
about those quiz episodes.
Here's what I'll say about that is I live with one of the biggest film buffs in the world. So you absorb a lot when you are married to and live with that guy. So, that's part of it. But hey, I'm glad everyone's playing along with me. I love it. I love to have my crew out there playing along with me. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah. So I just want to say, if you haven't listened to those year episodes and you're interested in kind of getting a really big picture of what was going on in cinema in the 80s, and culture, because we do, we sort of look at the news and we kind of try to contextualize.
Placing it in time.
Yeah, placing it in time. Trying to get a picture of not just the decade in cinema, but the decade in general, and understand why the movies that were being made then were being made.
Yeah, it's important.
Then I suggest you go back and listen to those episodes, because I think that I am proud of what we did with those episodes. I think we did something cool with those episodes.
I agree.
And I still think that that's sort of the backbone of the series. A couple of things that I heard from people, just questions. I guess the ones I got most were, why don't we publish show notes with lists of all the movies that we mention in every episode? And the short answer to that is writing show notes is a lot of work and would require a lot of time. And we only have so much time that we can realistically dedicate to this podcast. And so, we feel like that time should be dedicated to recording and managing the media as opposed to writing show notes. But I hear people people are like, oh, you're always recommending these movies.
Yeah, and they want to be able to get it
like,
somewhere.
It'd be nice to have a list somewhere.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, well, what I did was I created a Letterboxd account.
Oh, okay.
For people that aren't familiar with Letterboxd, it's like a social media service our social media platform for movie lovers, for film buffs.
Yeah.
So it's a place where you can log every movie you see. So people use it kind of like an online film viewing diary.
For those of us who are book readers, it's like a Goodreads for
yes,
film.
exactly.
In
fact, it's exactly like a Goodreads. I mean, it's almost identical in the way it's structured.
Yeah.
It has, like any social media service, developed an identity, and that identity is one that's kind of that I don't love, to be honest. Like, it's kind of arch and sarcastic, and it often feels to me like a competition among people to say the most sort of short, snide thing they can say about whatever film they watch. And as someone who not only studies films and writes about films and teaches film for a living, I also make films.
Yes.
And so as a filmmaker, I find it, that service somewhat problematic.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate thing that I think happens to every social media platform.
It's true on Goodreads too, right?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Is really catty.
It has a lot of problems of that nature. Yeah, absolutely. I don't actually go on it anymore. So
yeah. So I've never, despite being a huge film buff, I've never had a personal Letterboxd account, and I'm not saying I won't someday. Right now, I'm just using our show account. But I don't use it to log every movie I'm watching. I just created it because people did want those lists, and it seemed like a cool place to put them. Yeah, someplace different than just like writing them up and throwing them in show notes, which didn't sound like a lot of fun. It's also very easy and very fast that you can make lists on Letterboxd, which is what I've done. So for all of our episodes where we're recommending movies, I made a separate list for each one of those.
That's
and then
great.
for all of our sort of special episodes, like our, I can blanking off the top of my head, but like TV movies, I made
Christmas
one
movies,
for
TV
Christmas movies.
Yeah.
I made lists for each of those episodes too, so you can find the films. They're not comprehensive; they don't contain every movie we listed, but they do contain the movies we liked
and recommended.
And so, I would imagine that if you want lists of the movies that we're talking about in these episodes, you're wanting them because they sound interesting to you, and you might want to see them.
So my question, if I may I ask a question? How do people get to this, and could we link to these in the show notes for people? Maybe
I have started doing that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So there is a link to our Letterboxd account in the show notes.
Great.
It's pretty easy to find. It's letterboxd.com/thelongrewind.
Fabulous.
Letterboxd, for people that aren't familiar with it, somewhat annoyingly doesn't have an E and doesn't have two E's. It's LETTERBOXD.
Oh,
not BOXED.
Probably just a domain thing. Couldn't get the other one. I guess.
that would be my guess.
Yeah,
I'm guessing
probably.
Letterboxd was already taken, so it's become Letterboxd. Anyway,
cool.
The other thing that a couple people have asked me about is why we repeat ourselves in episodes. Like why I might say something, like tell a short story or say something about a movie one week, and then the next week I mention that movie and tell the same short story. The reason for that is that we record these shows wildly out of order.
Oh, yeah.
And
much like filmmaking.
And far in advance. Yep. So we recorded all 20 of the year-by-year episodes first. Which is why we're pretty rough in the first few. They were the first episodes we recorded. We were finding our footing. And then we started recording all of the like quiz episodes and the sort of special topics episodes, if you want to call them that.
Right, theme
that
episodes.
Sort of that I interspersed in between the year-by-year episodes. And so we did that over the course of a year, kind of getting the show ready to launch. And there were months in between, what sounds like a story I would tell one week and then I would tell the same story the next week. When we were recording,
that might be
those
months
episodes
apart.
might have been recorded 8 months apart, and I had no idea if I had told that story. I thought maybe I did, but maybe I didn't. So if there's repetition from episode to episode when you're listening, that's why.
That's how movies are made, right? They're made out of order, and so is this podcast to some degree.
That's true. So what are we doing moving forward? Well, we're finding time to record more episodes. We're thinking about how we might want to structure future sort of quote unquote seasons. I know people talk about podcasts as having seasons. I don't really think of it that way, but I guess they do. It's just
depends on the kind
question
of
you going away and coming back, I suppose, is what makes a podcast season. Or finding or if your show focuses on a specific subject, I could see why that you might call that a season.
Yep.
So to the degree that like this 10 months of weekly episodes we just put out is a season, we're thinking about seasons 2 and 3 and 4. We have some really good ideas for structured, focused seasons that we want to do, similar to how we dedicated the first season to doing a year-by-year overview of 80s cinema. But for what we're going to do for, I'm doing air quotes again. I should stop doing that since this is a podcast. But what we're going to do for season 2 is a little more sort of, I don't know, what's the word?
Thematic or?
Well, it's not. That's just it.
Freeform?
What's the opposite of thematic?
Freeform?
Freeform? Yeah, I guess freeform.
Okay.
But we'll tell you more about that in a couple weeks. The show is going to come back in mid-February, like sometime around Valentine's Day. Lisa and I just need that time to get this air quotes second season up and running. Yeah. we need time to record.
Got to get some more stuff in the can for y'all.
Yeah. There will probably be some reruns in season 2, just because we don't have the gigantic backlog of episodes that we had when we launched season 1, where we did a ton of pre-recording before we ever started the season.
Well, and also hopefully, that's a lot of content for people to follow along with. And if you missed it the first time, maybe it'll be fun to catch it in reruns.
Well, that's another thing I would say. Like, another thing I heard from a lot of people was how behind they were.
Yeah, I would be.
I mean, some people are power listeners. They catch it every week, and we love you.
Thank you
so much for doing that.
Yeah.
But most people, I mean, that's how I listen to podcasts. I don't know about you. I'll catch one here and then I'll miss 3, or I'll catch,
Sure.
you just, or go back and like, oh, how did I miss that? Like, that's just the way it works.
Yep.
A lot of people I know, especially, not a lot, but several people have mentioned that they wanted to listen to all the year by year episodes, but they're behind.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm still in 83 or,
there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. It's a lot. We did like an hour. We did 2 hours, I guess, for every
essentially, maybe a little more sometimes.
Maybe even, a little more. So that's 20 hours of plus of content to listen to. So, it's a lot. Keep doing it. Keep listening.
Please keep listening at your own pace. Take your time. There's no rush. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. But we need, similarly, like, we need time to generate content. And
We're all only human here, right?
There will be some reruns.
Yep.
We are committed to continuing to have no sponsors or commercials. And the reason for that is twofold or threefold, really. One is that as soon as we start doing that, we have to, as soon as you're even like on a small level doing it for a living, then you have to really answer to, it becomes a job, I guess.
Yeah.
It takes some of the fun out of doing it.
That's
Secondly
true.
is I don't like listening to, I don't know a soul that wants to listen to commercials in a podcast.
Yeah.
People, I mean, when I listen to a podcast and they start a commercial, I rush to that 30-second forward button immediately. And what happens when you hit that is you hit it, you keep hitting it until you know you're through the commercials, and you always miss a little bit of the show.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the last commercial, you've skipped some of the show. And there's just like, unless you're anal retentive about it, you probably just go forward. And so I'd rather people not miss any of the show by having to like skip commercials.
Right.
And it just takes away, I don't know, it just takes something away from it.
It's always a delight to listen to a podcast that has no commercials. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. But what that means is, again, that we're like doing this on our own time for fun. And it might take us a little more time.
Right.
To generate some content.
And it does allow us a little more creative freedom and to kind of range and respond to what you all are interested in and to what we're interested in too.
Yeah.
Without being held back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to say besides a gigantic thank you to all the people who are listening to the show and have given it good reviews and ratings online and have given us, positive feedback?
Other than that, which is probably my main point, is a big thank you to everyone and just thanks for being with us and continuing with us, we hope. It's been so much fun to do this, and I hope we get to keep doing it. It's a blast. I enjoy it. I'm hopeful others are enjoying it too, and I'm grateful for you all, and hope you stick with us.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well said. All right. So go back and catch up on those episodes you missed, and we'll see you with new episodes in February. Thank you, everybody.
And keep watching great movies. You've been listening to The Long Rewind. The program is produced by Dustin Morrow and hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli. If you enjoy the show, please consider hitting the subscribe button, leave us a good review on your podcast app, and tell your friends about the program. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.